to the cloud. Good to go.
All right. Hey, everybody, this is American Pie THF, and once again, joined by the wonderful Allison Price. And we're here today to do part 2 of our self-sufficient sustainability series. Our last one was about food sourcing, and we want to kind of continue today with food, but more about kind of breaking up with the grocery store, stocking your pantry, and maybe utilizing or cutting back on food waste. So I'm going to let Allison take it from here because she's the wizard.
Yeah. All right. So there was a statistic that I kind of mentioned on our last video, and I didn't have all the specifics. So I wanted to share that with you now. It was when we were talking about chickens, and I got this from the Defender podcast with RFK Jr. He had Joe Salatin on, and if you're not familiar, Joe Salatin, he runs Polyface Farms out of Virginia, and it's now pretty, I guess, famous, if you will, for their regenerative practices and their organic farming without being worried about being labeled by the powers that be and all that jazz. So anyways, he had shared a statistic about a town in Belgium that was offering families 3 chickens per family. This town was going to purchase them. And so 2,000 families took them up on the offer. There were 6,000 chickens purchased and distributed. And in 1 month's time, the landfill tonnage from that town dropped by 100 tons just by having the regenerative resource of chickens. So the families were taking their food scraps, and instead of just making them waste for the landfill, they were feeding their chickens with that. And then in return, the chickens are providing eggs. I'm sure some of the families, maybe at some point when those chickens no longer were, laying eggs anymore, maybe they chose to butcher them, use them as stew hens. But I found that pretty phenomenal statistic. Wow. And what a difference that can make for, individuals and for the earth and all that jazz. And then there was another thing that he had mentioned about the fact that we have a segregated food system, and we need to be more of an integrated food system. And so I think that plays a lot into what we talked about last week with sourcing your food locally, getting to know your farmers, getting out to the farmers markets. Most people don't realize that the average morsel of food travels 1,500 miles before it gets to its end destination. And Joel Salatin had joked around and said, that food you're eating has seen more of America than the farmer who grew it. And so it doesn't need to be like that. That's industrial agriculture at its finest. And maybe there was a time and a place for that, but we need to get back to our own local backyards. We need to get back to, being more self-sustainable with our food supply and being more, just supporting local, staying more in that integrated frame of mind versus segregated. And so you had mentioned somewhere in amongst all of our conversations about, I just drew a blank. You had mentioned, okay. It was, what were we talking about? The food system, segregated, getting to know, I don't know. It'll come to me. Yeah, we need to, about the fear. So what would you do if you went to the grocery store tomorrow and it was closed? And then you drove to the next town, wasted that gas, and that grocery store was closed. What would you do? And we talked about this at the end of the last video about when you don't have the fear because you know how to sustain yourself, to be self-sufficient, you open up a whole new world for yourself. So I kind of wanted to chat about that today with breaking up with the grocery store, kind of, because realistically right now, we still are probably going to go to the grocery store for some things. But if
Sure.
we can focus on baby steps to slowly cut out the grocery store, we're going to be better off in the long run. We're going to lose a lot of that fear, when you go and the shelves are bare and you don't know what to do. So I wanted to just share some things today to get your mind thinking in that direction, how you can start taking those baby steps. And the first tip that I learned a long time ago that was super helpful for me. Sorry, I'm stirring my tomato jam.
Yeah, I was like, what are you making over there, Allison?
Yeah, tomato jam. There it is.
Oh, yummy.
Cooking down on the stove. So when you go into your grocery store, focus on the perimeter, because the aisles are where you're going to get food, spelled PHOOD, not real food, not nutritious, has an ingredient label this long. It's packed with all kinds of ingredients that are banned in tons of other countries, but not here in America. So if you can start to focus on shopping the perimeter and providing the nutrition you and your family needs by doing that, you're headed in the right direction. Now, we know at the grocery stores, a lot of the meats may still be CAFO meats. They're coming from animals that have been fed on feedlots. They're pumped up on antibiotics. They never get off of the dirt. They don't eat any grass. They're fed tons of GMO corn, but it's a start. Okay. It's a start. So the other thing that I wanted to kind of talk about then, when you look at shopping the perimeter, is learning, how do I want to put this? I've done this for so long, and we were chatting beforehand that when I was trying to make some notes, it was difficult for a minute because I've been doing this for over a decade. So for me, I really had to think about some of these things, but learning how, this is perfect that I have my phone. So let me show you. So this is one of my cupboards and I've got like my vinegars and stuff because I make my own salad dressings. Most of your salad dressings at the grocery store are made with disgusting vegetable oils, canola oils that are so bad for your health. So we can just stock up on vinegars and we'll be able to make our own. I've got my pickling salt in there for making pickles and canning peppers. But then this is another thing. So this is a huge thing of rice. And then behind there, I've got different kinds of dried beans. I've got barley, I've got millet. And most people are probably, and then here, this a whole bunch of honey. Yes, it's in a Pierre's sherbet container, but I promise you that just came from the person that gave me the honey.
Sure,
So,
sure.
Well, sticky. Yes. Hey, you know what? And like on that note, 80-20 rule, folks.
That's right.
You cannot beat yourself up. I got a bag of chips sitting over there that goes in my husband's lunch every day because he likes his potato chips. So do I sometimes.
Yeah.
But when it comes to those things, you make smarter decisions about brands that maybe don't cook their chips in canola oil. They're using healthy oils. So I'm trying to keep this simple because I could go off on so many tangents, but if you can learn how to, actually, let me show you, this is a good example. So that rice I showed you, look what I got in my cabinet. This is garbage, but I got it because I've got 2 young kids and some nights we're not getting home until late. And this is just what's easy. Okay. But any time that I can be better prepared and make Spanish rice with rice, fresh tomatoes, a can of, canned tomatoes and the spices, you're going to be better off. So that packaged garbage, that's a luxury, but it's a luxury in the sense that when you go to the store and that door's closed and you needed rice, what are you going to do? If you're stocked up on plain rice and you know how to prepare the rice, and then you know how to make different variations of the rice, suddenly you're not so worried when that grocery store is closed or when that packaged rice, when that shelf's empty and sitting right next to it is plain rice. And everyone's like, whoa, what do I do with that?
What do I do with that?
Or it's the package of rice that you pop in the microwave. Look, I've got a microwave. It hasn't worked in, I don't know, 6-8 years. It's storage. got a
I
cast
love
iron
it.
pan in there. Sometimes I throw bread in there, all of these empty spice jars that I save to refill. I mean, we don't, it's only up there as storage. That's a whole nother topic, but we do not use the microwave. So, I think it's really important to learn how to stock your pantry. You know, you want those dried goods. They're not going to spoil. We tried to record this and my power went out. So this is our second take at this recording. But what if my power went out and it stayed out? What if it stayed out for days? What am I going to do then? You know, we have to think about these things. And having a well-stocked pantry is going to take the fear out of, you know, what if the grocery store doesn't have it? It's going to teach you how to be more self-sustainable. So I have like a whole list of different things that I thought about as examples, but do you have any questions so far?
No, I'm engrossed right now.
Okay. So, rice, you know, the beans, and then you get down to, just simple things like boxed cake mix. Why is anybody buying boxed cake mix other than for the convenience? Because it's disgusting. It's filled with horrible ingredients. And obviously it's not a, you know, it's not a necessity to begin with. But if you have your pantry stocked with flour and sugar and baking soda and baking powder, not only are those ingredients going to bake you a cake, but they can bake you a loaf of bread. They can also, some of those ingredients can clean your sinks and your toilet bowls and deodorize your carpet. Can you do that with a boxed cake mix? No, you know, and that's always such a stunner for people when I say, I've got my baking cabinet, I've got flour, I've got sugar, I've got baking soda, baking powder. Those are some of the staples, right? And those are going to bake me a cake. They're going to bake me a loaf of bread. They're going to clean my toilets, deodorize my carpets, freshen my mattresses, scrub out my sinks. And people are like, the same thing you're baking a cake with is going to, yes, absolutely. You know, so now I don't need to worry if I'm going to the grocery store and the cleaning aisle has no Comet or soft scrub or whatever all that garbage is that's toxic to your health. I'm just buying a 50-cent, well, heck, now it's probably like 80 cents, but an 80-cent box of baking soda. And I'm providing meals for my family with that, but I'm also cleaning with that. So I just have so many, my mind's going in so fiery.
I know you get, yeah, we could always get carried away. I know.
Yes, but I think we need to think more in terms of simplicity moving forward. We've had too much of the convenience factor ingrained into society, but I promise when you adapt these things into your lifestyle, they become a convenience. Another thing I wrote down was mac and cheese, right? Boxed mac and cheese, especially if you have little kids. I'm sure you are familiar with it. And yes, there are healthier versions of it that you can get. But I'll tell you what, I was sitting on the sidelines at football practice the other day, and I had mentioned how I whipped up some homemade mac and cheese for lunch. And I had about 5 moms staring at me like, oh, you just whipped up some homemade mac and cheese. Well, yeah, matter of fact, I did. It honestly was quicker and less of a hassle for me to make that versus the boxed mac and cheese. Because once you learn these things, I mean, it's noodles, it's a can of evaporated milk, it's some water, a little bit of mustard, a couple seasonings, and I make it in an Instapot. And it literally takes 5 minutes of my time, you know. I choose brick cheese and then I shred it. Mm-hmm. That is a choice I make. It takes an extra minute, but your bagged pre-shredded cheeses have so many preservatives and ingredients that are literally sawdust that you don't realize, but it's sawdust and it keeps the shredded cheese from clumping together. So these are quick changes you can make that over time are ultimately going to be better for your health, but also more sustainable for you. So you've got a box of elbow macaroni. Half of that box goes towards making homemade mac and cheese. The other half of that box goes into a vegetable soup that you're making later in the week. And instead of buying 5 boxes of instant mac and cheese and then, canned soup, which is the worst thing that you can be eating. It's just filled with sodium and nasty ingredients. And soup is meant to be a nourishing meal for us when prepared correctly. And then you can freeze it. You make extra. If you have a freezer, you freeze it. So it's just learning those ways that you can take minimal things, but create so much from it. Instead of buying seasoning packets for your tacos and for your pot roast and for your chili and I don't know, whatever else. This is what I'm saying is I've done this for so long that I don't know what people are buying seasoning packets for, because I'm buying in bulk, smoked paprika and dried oregano and salt and pepper and cumin. And those can all be used in different ratios to then create chili seasoning and taco seasoning and pot roast seasoning. So once you get, I want to say plethora, but that's not the right word. Once you get a list of what you use a lot, and then you just go buy those spices in bulk and get the recipes for like a homemade ranch, powdered ranch. That's like a huge thing I see, especially every year at back to school time. All these moms, and they have very good intentions, but they're sharing their 9,000 crock pot, dump in the crock pot menus. And everything always has powdered ranch packets, packaged Italian dressing, seasoning. And I just cringe because I'm like, I'm sure it tastes wonderful to you, but it is so bad for you. And again, what are you going to do if that's a recipe you rely on? And all of a sudden that pre-packaged mix is not available for you at the store. We have to learn how to make these things for ourselves. And then in the long run, it's healthier for us.
It usually tastes better.
They taste better. They're going to help further. You buy one seasoning packet, that's a one-time use. You buy these spices in bulk. Like here, I will give you an example because I have it right here. I mean, this is a bulk whole peppercorn. So I'm using these, and some of these get poured into my pepper grinder. And then sometimes these get thrown into chicken broth or beef broth when I'm cooking it down. Or different soups. And, there's just so many uses that this cost me $5.99. That's a lot of peppercorns when this thing was full. This is going to go a long way. So you find a bulk food store, buy your spices in bulk, and then get your little recipe cards out and make your own. Like, this is what I need to make Italian seasoning. This is what I need to make ranch seasoning. This is what I need to make taco seasoning. I mean, there's tons of recipes out there now that we can find, and you're going to save yourself money in the long run. It's going to be healthier, and you no longer have that fear or that reliance on industrial food, big food, big ag. I mean, how freeing is it to think, oh, I've got tacos on the menu tonight. You go into your cabinet and you're like, oh shoot, I have no taco seasoning packets. But you're like, but wait, I've got all my spices. I've got a stocked pantry. I'll just whip this up real quick on my own. And it's healthier. Now you're more self-sufficient. You're self-serving. You're not relying on industrial food. It's a win-win in my book.
Great.
Any questions?
No, not for me yet.
So another one is bread, right?
Ooh.
If we all learn to make bread, and then we all know that, well, you may or may not know, the gluten sensitivities, the gluten intolerance that a lot of us suffer from here in America has to do with our wheat, our GMO crops, and the pesticide that's laden in there. And a lot of people, I've talked with a lot of people over the years, I've read a lot of people's stories. If they make their own breads or their own sourdoughs and they source out non-GMO wheats, sometimes they're going to like ethnic food stores and they're buying the wheat that comes from those stores. They can tolerate loaves of bread and muffins and anything gluten that they would normally avoid. So if we just learn the simple art of, baking our own breads, and I'm still working on that. Yeast is not my friend most of the time. We have a love-hate relationship, and there's a science to using it.
Yeah.
But even sourdough, I started dabbling in that. Learn how to make that for yourself. You can make it in batches, then you can freeze it if you have it. And again, I mean, let's be honest, if you're buying a loaf of bread at the store, this might be your baby step. Instead of buying the Schwabel's Wonder Bread or whatever it is, buy the loaf of Italian bread from the bakery. It's still going to have maybe not the best ingredients, but that bread's going to mold within days. I guarantee it. And that's a good thing. You're consuming something that is better for you. And then from that baby step, then you move into learning how to make your own. Like the salad dressings that I mentioned earlier. If you do your own salad dressings, having the correct oils in your kitchen is going to provide for a well-stocked pantry. We want to get rid of our vegetable oils, our canola oils, soybean oil, sunflower oil, all of that stuff. The process that it goes through, you can YouTube it, you can watch the process it goes through to create those oils is disgusting. You would be mortified. You would be mortified to see what is required to create those oils so that they have a high smoke point. They have no smell to them. Instead, you just stick with your good fats. Your extra virgin olive oil is for things that are not heated. So salad dressings, marinades. And then if you need a high smoke point, like a high heat, maybe you're trying to fry something, avocado oil or your coconut oils. And coconut, you can get refined or unrefined, depending if you want the coconut flavor with it. As I mentioned, we have a microwave. It doesn't work. So when my kids want popcorn, let me show you. This is what I do. We get this. I put it in oil in a pan on the stove, and then we season it with salt. I always use real salt, shameless plug, Redmond real salt. And then we use nutritional yeast. We sprinkle nutritional yeast on it. Good for you and gives it like a buttery, cheesy kind of flavor. But again, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm just all over the place here, but I have so many thoughts. Corn is a huge GMO crop in America. So you need to source out popcorn right here, non-GMOs. Okay. You want to make sure that the popcorn is non-GMO. Otherwise it kind of defeats the purpose. Like, don't even consume it anyways. And this is just, for anybody who's curious, this is called Amish country popcorn. You can order it online. There's a couple places local to me, bulk food stores that sell it, but I always make sure it says non-GMO. There are a few kernels I've noticed they sell that do not say that. But microwave popcorn is one of the most toxic snacks you can consume because of what's contained within that bag and then the process of microwaving it and that goes through. So
that's something we've made a change. Dave likes to take popcorn in his lunch, and I bought I think it's a Pampered Chef, like it's a silicone thing. So it's still he still does it in the microwave. It makes it in the microwave, but we're getting our own kernels. He's seasoning it himself instead of buying a box of microwave popcorn. So like you were saying, it's baby steps. I was excited. My husband was willing to make a change because it is much easier and more convenient to throw a bag in the microwave and voila. This thing, he has to put the stuff together. He has to put, if he's going to use butter or coconut oil, he's got to be in control of what's actually going into that popcorn.
For sure. And it seems overwhelming at first, but once you get it down pat, I mean, it just becomes second nature. It's no big deal. And honestly, in the long run, it's going to save you time too, because you're thinking ahead. You have to prepare. You have to plan, know what you're preparing, but it just becomes such second nature. Another thought with the grocery stores. Okay, so for your vegetables, you've got three options. You've got fresh vegetables, frozen vegetables, and canned vegetables. So I would say first and foremost, grow your own. If you can't grow your own, when things are in season, seek them out locally. Go to farmers markets, go to produce auctions if you have any by you. I happen to live near Amish, so they've got their own roadside stands, but try and source locally during the season for whatever it is that you're choosing to consume. If you can't get it locally, then by all means, get it fresh out of the grocery store. It may have traveled 1,500 miles, but it's fresh. Yes. And then
Is
you've
that
got
is it a pH fresh, just like a pH food? Yeah.
kind of. And then you've got your frozen and you've got your canned. And so it's kind of like pick like, well, we could go either way. Frozen is ultimately still going to give you more nutritional benefit than canned. But then you run into the issue of freezer space. Maybe you don't have all the freezer space. Maybe you want to be stocking up to be a little bit, stocked up on a little bit more of your shelf stable foods. So you just got to use your judgment there, pick and choose there. Frozen's usually going to give you the better nutritional value. But if you're canning your own veggies, then you're always going to choose that every day over anything else, because where those veggies came from. You grew them yourself, or you purchased them from somebody local. But again, that whole concept just goes back to shopping the perimeter of your grocery store. If you need tomatoes, the first thing you're going to do is check the perimeter for those tomatoes. And then if the perimeter doesn't have them, then you're probably going to move on to canned tomatoes. And it is what it is. But I'd rather see somebody take canned tomatoes and cook them down on their stove, add a little bit of Italian seasoning, and there's your marinara sauce, instead of grabbing a jar of ragu. Because I'll tell you, if you go into the spaghetti sauce section and you start reading the ingredients on the back of all of those spaghetti sauce jars, you're opening up a whole nother can of worms, and that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video. But ultimately, you are going to be more self-sustainable if you can stock up on canned tomatoes, and how to turn those into chili, jambalaya, marinara sauce, pizza sauce, tomato soup. I mean, the possibilities are endless from that one jar versus buying canned chili, jambalaya seasoning packet, tomato soup in its own can. And what else did I say? Marinara sauce and pizza sauce. I mean,
I even made salsa with canned tomatoes when I didn't have fresh. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's another, take that canned tomatoes and compare that ingredient label to the ingredient label on a lot of salsas out there. Mm-hmm. So this topic is so vast because, we said in the beginning, we're talking about how to quote unquote break up with your grocery store. You're still going there for some things. Okay. But you're becoming more self-sustainable because you're learning how to create more of what you need at home or with minimal things from the grocery store. But the other side of that is your health. You are becoming healthier in the process of becoming more self-sustainable because you're not relying on the disgusting processed packaged foods that are passed off as food here in America. Yeah. So it really becomes such a large topic that we could, the web we in the directions we could go with this. But, those were some of the things I had written down: the seasonings, the dressings, right? Knowing how to prepare raw rice, dried rice. What would that be? I don't know. Raw rice. Learning how to prepare dried beans instead of relying on canned beans all the time. And then you've got shelf stability there without losing the nutrition because they're dry. It's not that they're even canned, they're dry. So you don't need, you don't need the freezer, and you don't, you're not taking the stuff out of the can that may be soaking in BPA and all that jazz. So stocking up on your dried goods, your spice cabinet, your dried goods, your rice, your beans, your different kinds of grains, quinoa, amaranth, millet, whatever you like to use, barley. I use a lot of barley, especially in the colder months, because I like to add it to soups and stews. We all enjoy it. It's nutritious for you. But again, when you're sourcing those things out, source them out organically.
Lentils was another one that we started to get into this past year when we didn't really have them before. We didn't. Yeah.
It's a great option. I actually have some in my pantry right now. I'm still trying to get my family on the lentil bandwagon, but I mean, that's another great option. And, you get all of those things, you store them in your pantry correctly, they're going to have a shelf life of forever. I mean, I don't know what the shelf life actually is, but if they're stored properly, they're not picking up moisture, you're good. They're going to when you need them. And then those are less things that you need to constantly be running to the grocery store for, because when you get them at the grocery store, they're processed, they've got tons of junk in them, food preservatives. And then, as we've said already, what happens when you go to the grocery store to get it and the grocery store is closed, And so that another thing that I just thought of, we talk about sourcing out your food and farmers markets and stuff like that. But what about for these dried goods? You might not always be able to find those at farmers markets, but we had mentioned buying clubs in our last video.
Yeah.
There are companies like Azure Standard where you can create your own buying club and you order in bulk things like Redmond real salt and your spices and your dried grains and your rices. You order it from a company like that. Get a couple people in on that order. You're saving on shipping. You might get a group volume buying discount. And then again, you're not relying on the grocery store. You're relying on a company whose sole purpose as a company is to be providing us those items in bulk so that we don't have to rely on our grocery store. And they're sourcing them out from clean sources, organic sources. They're finding, they're finding those farmers that maybe we aren't, able to connect with. So that's another good option before you just go to industrial agriculture and big food and all that garbage.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, no, those are all like great ideas. And my thought is we were coming into this, and some of it even relates to the suggestions you've given. And these are just things that I've been trying to do in the last couple of years. I am much more on top of what it is that we are buying and how I'm preparing it than I ever was. These past 2.5 years have put me in that mindset. But also, I mean, what also has come during this time for a multitude of reasons is also saving money when it comes to these, like you were saying, buying in bulk. And then I also I don't want to be wasteful if I don't have to be. I don't want to be wasteful. I've never been, I mean, I grew up, I was the kid, you had to eat everything on your plate because somebody was starving somewhere in Africa. And so I was brought up with the whole, you really don't wait. If you don't want it, don't take it. Don't put it on your plate. Don't, if you're not going to finish it, don't even start it, whatever. I think we were all in this age category here, probably raised that way. And I still have that mindset. And a lot of people, I think now we're struggling with, price increases, job losses, scarcity. They're in a scarcity mindset, whatever it is. I think it's also good to learn to use what you have a little bit more and not be so wasteful. So adding on to what Allison's saying, she has a beautiful stocked pantry and you should have that. But here's the other thing, as you are continuing to shop for that, don't forget about rotating your pantry, okay? A lot of times we come home and you open the cupboards, whether you went to the farmer's market or a bulk order comes in, you just put it right in the cupboard and you're putting the newest, freshest ingredient first and top before stuff maybe that's older or you've already opened, things like that. So if you want to save money, not be wasteful, you want to kind of learn that whole rotation. If your product does have an expiration date, you want the expiration date that's going to expire sooner to the front and the new, the older one to the back. So just simply rotating. If you have like Allison has a lot of canned things in her downstairs pantry. She's not going to take anything she has left from last season that's still good to eat and keep pushing that to the back. She's probably going to bring that, face it forward, put her new stuff this year behind it. that can help keep, being wasteful.
For
The other thing I'm
sure.
going to say, and I know this is might be controversial for some, and I have to be honest, I was this person too. Expiration dates on products. Expiration dates. I used to be the person that if I had a gallon of milk and today it expired, I would not smell it. I would not taste it. I wouldn't do anything. It's the 29th. I would pour that shit down the drain.
Yep.
I've learned with time, I think that's a little bit of a marketing ploy, a company CYA or covering their ass. I don't know. But a lot of your products have at least another week's shelf life. Yogurts have like at least another 2 weeks shelf life. This is where I say use your discernment, use your head, use your sights, open it up, look at it, smell it, take a taste.
They say that 40% of food in this country is not consumed for reasons such as that,
for that reason. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, look at it, like use your eyeballs. A lot of times I'll even go, when I was going into the grocery store, they were starting to do things where you could tell, like my local grocery store that I was using was not a big corporate grocery store. It was a smaller, they had just a few locations. And so what I was beginning to see happening is that as they were getting like meat that might be, they need to move it, they would put it in like a bulk pricing, like buy 5 packages for $25, whatever that was. And so that might frighten people too. And it's like, again, look at the meat. Does it look healthy? Does it look fresh? Maybe it says expire, it'll say expire, use by, or freeze. Okay, then go freeze it. You didn't have to be afraid of it so much.
Right.
The other thing I'm learning to use, whether I've purchased them from a source or grown in my own garden, is the tops of your veggies, your radish tops, your carrot tops.
So nutritious.
Yeah, they're very nutritious. You can saute them and make it as a side with garlic and olive oil. You can make a pesto, a chimichurri. There's all kinds of things that you can do with even the tops of beets. Yeah, and we throw that out. We call that waste as well.
And
I don't have any chickens to feed it to, so.
Well, worst case scenario, if it's not something you want to consume in that manner, throw it all into a stock pot with water and make yourself vegetable broth.
Exactly.
It might look pretty to you, but it still has intense nutritional value.
Yeah.
So anything, like if I'm chopping up carrots and onions and celery, the parts that I'm chopping off to not be put into my actual dish go into a container, into the fridge, and over the next few days I'll amount enough that then it goes into a stock pot and it simmers on the stove for 10 hours.
That's it.
And now vegetable broth.
That's
and if
it.
you don't, make yourself a compost pile and throw all of that into your compost pile. And if you don't have reason to use compost right now, I guarantee somebody will gladly come take that compost off your hands. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're going to compost. I mean, that was something, everybody wants to scare you that there's no fertilizer. Oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, what I'm going to do for my garden right now is I'm going to start making my own fertilizer or compost, if you will. So we've started with things just as simple as our eggshells, our banana peels, our coffee grounds, any of that. In fact, I have a board sitting out in the yard right now that I've been raking through for the last 2 days to dry out the coffee grounds. It's not that hard. You put it in an old coffee can and save it until you're ready, and you take it out, you dump it. My eggshells, I put into a food processor and zip it down into a powder. Yeah, there's things we can do.
Habits.
Yeah.
What do they say? It takes 30 days to make or break a habit. Actually, there's a really good book called Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
I can't author off the top of my head, but a lot of people would look at that book and view it for like career wise, reading it about how to get further in their career. But honestly, you can take all the concepts in that man's book and apply them to your lifestyle. and it will help you to make these simple changes one at a time until it just becomes second nature for you to be doing it that way.
No, very much so. I mean, and what else? Like you're saying, the carcasses of chicken, bones from a steak, throwing it in with those ends of your vegetables to make your own bone broth, stocks, whatever. You can use it to make soups. You can use it to deglaze pans. I also use it in preparing my dog's food. Again, not a wasted product. Corn on the cob, you can take the kernels off and freeze them. You can boil the cobs down and you have another kind of stock. And let me tell you, corn on the cob stock or broth, make a rice pudding with that.
Ooh, that sounds
yeah, that's good. That's good. It's real good.
I just put a whole bunch of empty corn on the cobs to my chickens yesterday after I took the kernels off.
Yeah.
And now I did it because I would have
liked to go out and ask them, did anybody save one? You got a cob out there?
Untouched out there. But, too, like with the vegetable broth, the beef broth, the chicken broth, if you're not making soup or some of the other things that you recommended, if you're boiling water to cook rice or beans, you can use the stocks instead of just plain water. And then you're going to flavor, you're going to get more nutrition and whatever grain that is that you're cooking up. So
yeah, that's a great idea.
Having that kind of stuff on hand, the stocks are part of having a well-stocked pantry. And I mean, you will never, especially in the colder months, we're getting less natural vitamin D with the weather and whatnot. I always have quart-sized canning jars in my freezer of chicken broth. And when somebody's not feeling well, guess what they're going to be sipping on all day? I'm going to be thawing out that chicken broth, warming it up, and they're going to be sipping on it in a mug all day. I mean, back in the day, wasn't that called grandma's penicillin? I mean, isn't that people referenced that? I mean, there is some, there's a legit reason why these things were called what they were. So we need
absolutely
of that mindset. We need to go rediscover that, because the generations are quickly passing where, unless people like you and I are sharing this with others, my kids won't know about any of that if it wasn't for me sharing that with them. They wouldn't know where a chicken nugget comes from. I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and the gentleman said how he had a mother contact him because her kids were eating pickles and there was a stem on it, and they were like mortified, like, why is there a stem on my pickle? And the mother had to explain that because it's a cucumber. It grows on a vine. That's what pickles come from. And the kids were just dumbfounded, like they could not wrap their brains around it. So she found somebody that lived nearby that had a garden and said, can I bring my kids over and show them the cucumbers and help them visualize this process of how it becomes a pickle. And I just feel like it's things that we take for granted, but gosh, people really don't know.
They don't know. And other things like old lettuce in your fridge, you think it's starting to turn brown and you don't want a salad with it. It's something, you got a good blender or food processor, you could throw it in there and grind it down. And again, you still get some nutritional value. You can add it to soups. You can add it to your pasta sauce. You can do all kinds of stuff with that. Crumbs, potato chips, crackers, tortilla chips. So you have bought these at the store. I make something, it's called migas, and it's the bag of the end of the tortilla chips. And it's like a Mexican egg, it's salsa dish. And you throw your tortilla crumbs in there. That's really good.
What about, so this made me think of breadcrumbs.
Yes.
I'm out of breadcrumbs when I need them. So if I have croutons or any kind of cracker, I just smash those up. I've even used pretzels, smash that up. Is now my breadcrumbs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can do that with cereal. If you're buying your kids a certain, cereal that it might not be fantastic, but you could save the, you could make crumbles with it, add it with the oatmeal. Yeah, anything like that. Same thing with like fruit. So you got some fruit that's looking suspect. You can turn it into applesauce and compotes. I mean, it doesn't have to go into a trash can.
Yes. So let me show you this because this is still a hurdle for my husband. Okay.
Okay.
When the bananas get disgusting and brown,
Oh yeah, yeah.
put them in his smoothies, which make me insane because it's a smoothie. Like you're not going to know if the banana was green, yellow, or looking very sad like this. And he won't use them. And it makes me insane. So I just save them and I will either bake them in some oatmeal for my kids, or, you turn them into banana bread, banana muffins, something that gets cooked down and you're never going to know the difference. And most people don't realize, but when a banana gets that dark, its sugar content increases. So it's a lot sweeter too. So if you're somebody who has a sweet tooth and you're trying to satiate that in a more natural manner than white sugar, get an overripe banana and you're going to get, all the benefits of, magnesium and all those things that bananas provide to us, but you're also going to have, it'll help with your sweet tooth.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I just want to kind of cover, and, again, like Allison has said, a lot of the topics we're covering could be their own video segments on their own.
Yes.
Most people who know me, I cook for my pets. I still see that, to me, it's a cost savings instead of buying processed food, because I don't even know that that's food. Because if your pet was outside in the wild, they would not forage for, compressed kibble somewhere that has a lot of filler in it. They would be eating, dead rodents and roots and vegetables and anything like that they could find. So I cook for them. And again, it's cost effective because I can buy things that are in season. In season items are usually a little cheaper. I can buy or get my hands on ground turkeys, ground beef, ground chicken. That's usually a little less expensive. If salmon's on sale, because sometimes I don't understand that, but sometimes salmon seems to be seasonal. Don't we? Yeah.
Or like when you're buying the wild caught salmon, there's certain times of year that it's in season where it's running.
Yeah. So I can buy a lesser expensive protein. At Thanksgiving time, turkeys are like what, 89 cents a pound, even in a grocery store, folks. And I can go and buy a big 14-pound turkey and cook that off for them. And then my husband picks it down. We freeze some. And we've got turkey for them for forever. You're going to take the skin and that off, but I cook for them. And in turn, since I'm cooking for them, when things start to look suspect, like bananas, apples, strawberries that you bought maybe, and they're starting, you're not quite sure you want to eat them, and you have too many for a smoothie, they go into their food and they eat them. Now, I would never recommend to somebody, if you've been feeding your dog a certain diet, jumping into something like that. Because again, what if you went to the grocery store, the pet store tomorrow, and it was closed? How do you feed your pet?
Yeah.
So maybe it's something you start to slowly integrate into their diet so they don't have digestive upset. And I cannot speak highly enough. I got to give this book a plug. I love this book. But it's The Forever Dog.
Ooh.
And I've been cooking for my pets forever, probably almost as long as I've been a pet owner. But even that book I got in the last couple of years opened my eyes to some things again that we have been told. I think some of the same wool pulled over our eyes for our own personal health, wellness, and food consumption has also crossed over into our pets. And there's things in there, they're talking about, cooking your dog's food and adding, non-caffeinated tea, steep. They get the same benefits from some teas like that you steep in a tea bag. Herbs, you got old herbs in the garden that are suspect. Cilantro, basil, you can put it in their food and they're going to get those nutritional values. A lot of the things that we've been told they're not supposed to eat,
I'm pretty sure my dogs have ate them all, and they're
Yeah,
still.
they can eat it. I mean, and I don't just take my word for it, and you don't even have to believe the author of this book. I began to notice in this, even when I do go to pet people to buy my dog certain things, if you look, even their treats are starting to get garlic or mushroom in them, which were always things we were told, oh no, you don't ever feed your dog that. No, no, no. But it's in their products now, more, or the more natural or less processed products. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
So yeah, there's very few things. Grapes, onions, those are still things you don't want your dog to have for various reasons. But other than that, it makes it very easy, cost efficient to start making, or even just supplementing. Say you still want to give your dog kibble for whatever reason, you can still add supplementation in there to stretch your kibble, to start adding some maybe better nutrients for them. Because taking them to the vet all the time for things is also expensive. So cost cutting is also looking at their health, well-being, and nutrition as just as much as yours. So yeah, that's
Right.
a big, and you know, and the last thing I would follow up with, Allison was talking about soup, and I couldn't agree more. And some days what you have to do, and again, cutting back on waste, is open your refrigerator, open your pantry, dig around. What do you have bits and pieces of? What do you have something that's suspect that you think, that's probably going to go bad? It's a leftover. You get a pot of that stock or broth that you've made and you start throwing in some stuff in your fridge instead of throwing it out. Add a protein if you want, don't, whatever. And you've got soup.
Yeah. My husband will always joke, well, this tastes really good, but I bet you'll never be able to replicate it. Right. And I'm like, nope. Because yeah, it's whatever's coming in the fridge, and just on the dogs, I was going to say, that might be one thing we have yet to see a shortage on is the pet food, but I can guarantee you, we have seen the increase on the pet food.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience, and like with my horses, we went from $12 for a bag of grain to $28. So, if not for any other reason, if it's trying to help budget better, start making your pet food. And I can tell you from experience, and I'm sure you'll say the same, the amount of waste that you have to clean up after your dogs that are eating homemade food versus kibble food. Ooh, I will take that any day of the week.
Yeah. In fact, I feel like they might be some of my best composters, because a lot of times I'm like, it looks like there's more food. Like if they've had carrots, or I'm like, that's food in here. It's a pile of food.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Anything else you can think of you'd want to add to leave people with in this video?
I would just say, again, not to be a broken record, but approach this in baby steps.
Absolutely.
If you don't know where to begin, just start by trying to get most of your stuff around the perimeter of the grocery store.
Yeah, that's it.
Those middle aisles, it's still not going to be amazing, but it's going to be better than nothing. I challenge people to also try to eat a little bit more seasonally. I'm going to be doing a challenge in the fall on that. I've participated in challenges in the past where like you go a week of meals that are all seasonally available items. And cool. It really eye-opening experience. It's a great way to learn, but I think you had said this a little bit earlier, you'll probably pay a little bit less too. When you're sourcing out produce that's in season, it's going to be a lot less expensive than trying to get your hands on things that are being shipped 1,500 plus miles or shipped from other countries.
Yeah,
so we've got to go with the flow and follow, heed Mother Nature's advice. And, if she's starting to hibernate, then we start to hibernate and, switch up our diets accordingly, and we'll be better off for it. But when you watch for those kind of cues and you start following along in such a manner, you're going to make this transformation more naturally than I think you realize. So just, take it in baby steps, shop the perimeter, try to purchase things that don't have an ingredient label that's a mile long. And maybe start with one of your cabinets. Maybe it's your spice cabinet, maybe it's your baking cabinet, or I don't know, whatever, but just start making small changes there and you'll see how far you can really come with it. It's incredible. And then you lose a lot, just like we said in the last video at the end. Once you start to implement everything we've talked about, the fear goes like this. Yes, and it's such an amazing feeling.
It is. And I think, we cost your servings also start to become less per serving when you're buying and making things. People think, oh, it must be more expensive than buy. No, not. I feel like you get more servings. You can get, You're
ultimately eating less because you're feeding your body more nutritious food. So you're filling up. You're getting the nutrients you need. It's not just empty calories. So you're right. Like you're preparing a home cooked meal that's going to have leftovers. You're stretching your buck. I mean, it's amazing. Last week I was doing a fridge empty and I had mushrooms that needed used and I had some onions that needed used and some cheese that probably needed to be used, and everything went into an egg casserole. And that's what we had for dinner, So I, like when you were asking, like I challenge people to think outside of the societal paradox, who says I can't have eggs and bacon for dinner? Or, my son was actually with a friend over the weekend camping, and the one morning for breakfast, they had hamburger meat and scrambled eggs because that's what they had. And it was the last day of the camping trip. Who says you can't have ground beef and scrambled eggs for breakfast? If that's right. That's what you want, if that's what needs used up so that it's not being wasted. I mean, forget about what society tells you is the way things should be. If you're craving some shrimp in the morning, cook up some shrimp.
Cook up that shrimp. That's right. That's right. So this is number 2 of our self-sufficient sustainability series. We are going to jump back on here pretty quickly, I think Wednesday this week, and we're going to go into episode 3, and we're going to talk about first aid or empowering ourselves to be a little more in control of health and wellness at home, and not always necessarily needing to rely on a doctor or what are these? I mean, what are all these places that are popping up on the corners? These emergency.
Oh, don't even get me started. I know.
So just starting to teach people a little bit more about how to take control of things at home with their family, things that they can have on hand, how they work, why they work, and where they originated from.
I will have an amazing story for this because I was stung by something over the weekend, and I'll have to send you the picture. My feet, one was humongous and blown up like an elephant, and the other one was normal. And if I had a dime for every person who saw me over the weekend and said, you need to go to the ER, you need to go to the ER. And, here we are a couple days later, and it's swelling's gone down. I don't have pain anymore. It's got a little bit more to go, but I knew how to handle that on my own. Yeah. So I saved myself the copay. I saved myself the undoubted, prescriptions for antibiotics that I probably would not have used anyways. And just the waste of time exposing myself into a medical setting where I'm sure there's all kinds of germs that I don't really want to be around anyways.
Right.
I will have to meditate before our next session.
That's right. Very much so.
I will really be driving that train. Whew, you're gonna have to like pause me.
Rein you in.
Yeah. Okay. Stop. Allison's she needs a breather.
Maybe we'll have intermission on the next video. We'll have to go away for.
We may need that because, oh boy, but gosh, so empowering though. So empowering when you know how to be in tune with your body and you know how to trust your instincts. okay, well, I'll save that for next time, but
That's right.
you know where I'm going.
That's right. So this was number 2, breaking up with your grocery store and maybe a little food waste usage here of our self-sufficient sustainability. We will continue this week with first aid in your home, health and wellness, right? Empowering you right there. We will put in the bottom of this video links to how to find Allison. She's always got some great books or podcasts. We'll make sure that those links are in there below. And we're always up for possible topics you'd like covered, or if you have something that we didn't cover here when it comes to pantry stocking, food waste usage, let us know. We'd be happy to add that to this discussion as well. So I think you have to feed horses. Yeah, you have horses to feed, and
I got some jam to can up. I'm about to taste it.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear about the jam. We'll hear about her tomato jam, how it is and what she's been using it on too.
It tastes really good. I'm shocked.
Good. Perfect. All right. So everybody enjoy their Monday. It's Monday. Enjoy your Monday. Get a great jump on your week. Maybe make something homemade or try one of our recipes today. And we'll see you later this week.
Perfect. Can't wait.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.